Hello everyone and welcome to another awesome game from the UzChess Cup 2025. It is the penultimate round and we have Aravindh Chithambaram versus Richárd Rapport. If you still by some chance have not seen the game Pragnananda versus Rapport, first link in the description below, you should watch it before you check out this game. But we've already seen what happened between Pragg and Arjun. Pragg defeated Arjun. Arjun had his first loss of the tournament in the penultimate round. So we're going to have a really big clash in the final round, but we're going to get to that after we check out the game. So Aravindh with white opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to c5. We've already seen what Rapport can do with the Sicilian defense, especially with e6 as his weapon. Knight to f3 and pawn to e6. The French Sicilian, we have d4. C captures on d4, knight captures and pawn to a6. Richárd goes for the Khan variation and bishop to d3. This is the modern way of challenging the Khan, and everyone does it. It's the most played move against the Khan. We have bishop to c5. Knight to b3 attacking the bishop, bishop to e7, queen to e2, and knight to c6. We have bishop to e3 and pawn to d6. Okay, pretty standard stuff here. And now knight 1 to d2. Pretty more common is castle's kingside, but okay, knight 1 to d2. We have knight f6 and castle's kingside. There are some games where castle's queenside was played, nothing wrong with it, but castle's kingside is the safer option, so to say. We have bishop captures on e3. Getting rid of the dark square bishop, and now queen captures. There's no reason to mess up your pawn structure, so queen captures on e3 and castle's kingside. And here we have rook f to d1, which is a new move. So already as of move 12, we have a completely new game. Other moves have been played here. a4 was played, rook 8 to d1, rook f to e1, f3 was played, f4 was played, but rook f to d1 never. So, okay, queen to c7, pretty standard developing idea, and pawn to c4. Again, fighting against black executing d5, which is what you always want against the Sicilian. As we say, if you execute d5 in the Sicilian, you're either equal or even better most of the time. So, okay, knight b4, putting pressure on the bishop, and here you could go some like bishop to b1, then let's say e5, a3, you kick away the knight, and you keep the bishop. But Aravindh says you can have the bishop, knight f3. And okay, we have pawn to e5, and now just pawn to a3, attacking the knight. And while you're definitely expecting knight captures on d3, why wouldn't you play it? You eliminate the bishop, but here just knight back to c6, and you allow white to keep the bishop on d3. Pawn to h3, stopping bishop or knight g4, and also freeing up the h2 square for the king if it's going to be needed. Bishop to e6, and now knight b to d2, preparing pawn to b4 in some lines. We have knight to h5, preparing knight to f4, and now bishop to f1. The bishop on f1 will be an excellent defender, keeping an eye on everything, especially if that knight lands on f4. So knight to f4, Richárd does it right away, and rook a to c1. We have queen to e7, with some ideas of there's already a knight on f4, maybe some bishop captures on h3, queen f6, queen g6. It's Rapport playing, so that is what we are expecting. Maybe f5 first to open up the rook on the f-file. Maybe you double up on the f-file. So, of course, that's what we are, used to when Rapport is playing. But not pawn to b4. But rather pawn to g3, saying, okay, you decide what you want to do here and now. But the problem with winning the pawn on h2 is that white will not give up the bishop. White will play king to h2, and then play bishop g2, and then bring the rook to h1, and then, if you move the knight, then move the king. And the open h-file for white could also be a problem for black. So instead, after g3, knight back to g6, and now pawn to b4. Okay. Or definitely the best move. We have rook 8 to d8. Now, again, hoping for that future d5 pawn push. Bishop to g2. We have pawn to h6 and rook to e1. Situation on the clock, Aravindh doing a little bit better. But, okay, 28 minutes, still not scary territory. We have rook to d7, king to h2, and now queen to d8. Seems like a waiting move, but really you're freeing up the e7 square for the knight, and then maybe going pawn to d5, but also pawn to f5 is an option in many lines. We have bishop back to f1, knight g to e7, and pawn to b5 now. We have captures, knight to a5, and now knight to c4, offering a trade of knights. And here Rapport finally pushes forward, pawn to f5. you want to eliminate the e4 pawn, and then you will have, well, just a free pawn to d5 move. Rook f, knight f back to d2, and knight captures on c4. We have bishop captures on c4, bishop captures, and rook captures on c4. We have king to h8, getting the king to a bit of a safer square, and king to g2. White does the same. Pawn to d5. Now, there's no... Oh, you could maybe... advance the pawn to f4. It's definitely an option. White doesn't have to capture. Of course, white could just move queen b3. And now that king move, king g8 to h8 definitely makes sense. And now, for example, you play pawn to d5. Also looks very nice. But okay, pawn to d5 was played first. We have e captures on d5, knight captures attacking the queen, and now queen back to e2. And here Aravind missed something. Who knows what? Queen captures on e5 is the move you have to play. And then, okay, Rapport has, rook e7 can be played, pawn to f4 can be played. And it looks very scary. But he did it anyway, so you might as well capture the pawn right away. But in the game, queen to e2 was played, and he allows Richárd to go pawn to e4. And only now, after knight to f1 and pawn to f4, can he capture again a pawn, because now pawn to f3 is coming and you could lose a queen. So here we have queen captures on e4. Other moves don't really help white all that much. F captures, we have f captures and rook to e7, attacking the queen. And the queen back to b1. Regardless of what Aravind plays, Rapport's position is winning, but here with this queen to b1 move, it's particularly tricky to win. There's only one move that wins the game for Rapport, and of course I'm not just gonna tell you which one. Feel free to pause the video and win the game for Richárd while I give you a couple of seconds. So the only move that wins the game is rook to f7. Rook e to f7, that is to be, for someone who's only listening, not watching, and there's nothing more to be done here. And the problem is, how do you stop rook f2? Rook f2, then some queen d7, queen captures on h3. You cannot bring this rook, the knight is covering the f4 square, and you can't play rook to c2. Rook to c2 fails miserably to rook captures on f1. And you can't move this rook because then again, rook captures on f1. And the beautiful part about this is that again, rook captures on f1, rook captures knight e3 check with a nice triple fork here. Beautifully achieved. And after whatever king moves, you will simply start capturing. Captures. And if captures, then even queen d1 check picks up the rook on c2. And I mean, what a way to finish the game. So here king to g2 was played. Aravind finds a way to continue, but Rapport does not play the absolute best move, queen f6, and there's no move that white can really make. Richárd played queen to d7, and now there is a way for white to make it a little bit difficult for black to just force an endgame or an end of the game, but Aravind misses it. Here Aravind just played queen to d3, but there do you see the resilient defense, the one that really makes your opponent go into full try-hard mode? I'm pretty sure you do, but if you want, you can always pause the video. I don't have to command it. Rook to g4 stops queen captures on h3, and now the point is, after rook to f2, you're gonna play queen a1. You're gonna threaten checkmate, and now it doesn't matter. For example, h5, you can play rook g5. It doesn't matter. The queen cannot capture on h3, as queen captures on g7 would be checkmate. So it would be a really annoying defense that Rapport would be very sorry for. Had Aravind found rook to g4. About 6.5 minutes on the clock. He played queen to d3. He spent 4. He could have looked further, but where does it end? And now just rook to f3. Queen captures on h3 would be not the best way to go, because then rook to h4, and you have to go back. If you go all the way back, then rook d4 will pick up the knight, and if you go queen to f5, you can simply trade captures, a4, equal material, and it's going to be a draw. So here, after queen d3, rook to f3 was played. And it doesn't matter that Aravind is up a pawn. That pawn is not useful at all. So queen to e2, and now queen captures on h3. And again, it seems like Aravind has everything under control, but after rook to d4, Rapport has a very unpleasant surprise for Aravind. Feel free to pause the video and once again, find the absolute best move while I give you a couple of seconds. So every move you can think of is winning here for black. You can even capture on a3 and you're still going to be winning, but I hope that's not the first move that came to your mind when I asked you to pause the video. Of course, the move is rook captures on g3 check. And that's it. The king has no squares. If you block with the queen, it's just checkmate, and you have to capture it with the knight. Knight captures on g3. Queen captures. Now, if you block with queen g2, then queen captures rook on e1. So king to h1 was played, and now rook to f2. And he was in this position on move 44 that Aravindh Chithambaram resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Problem is, you do have a check, you do have 2 checks, but you don't have 3 checks, and that's what Rapport found. Point being that after queen e8 check, king h7, and queen to e4 check, you can comfortably play pawn to g6, and there is no queen e7, because that knight that's been hanging on d5 for the better part of the game is actually very useful. It's guarding the d7 square, and without that, you have nothing. So here you will just resign. You cannot prevent both queen h2 checkmate, and if somehow you stop that, queen g2 will be checkmate, rook h2 will be checkmate, so everything is checkmate here. So yeah, beautifully played by both of them, but it is Rapport who takes this one. If you still haven't seen the previous game, Pragnananda versus Arjun, do check it out. And also, if you still haven't seen Pragnananda versus Richárd Rapport, probably the best game of the tournament, feel free to check out that one, and also the one where, Kasparov played against Timan. Nice games to check out. So I hope you enjoyed it. Very nicely played. If you haven't seen the standings, these are the standings going into the final round. Nodirbek leading with 5.5 points. Javokir Sindarov with 5 points. Pragnananda and Arjun tied with 4.5. In third place, and that's pretty much it. Those are the only players who can win the tournament. And like we said a couple of rounds ago, Nodirbek will be playing Pragnananda in the final round. Nodirbek will have the white pieces. So if Prag wants to force tie breaks, he needs to beat Nodirbek with black. And I think we're going to have a beautiful final day. So we'll see what happens. For the other pairings, Javokir is facing Parham Maksudlu, and Arjun, who also has a chance, has the white pieces against Aravindh. So, anything can still happen. Like I said, it's going to be a very interesting final round. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Check out the previous one as well. It was a beautifully fought game. I would like to thank Torkel Stenquist, Felix Steinel, Steshadri Subramanian, Andrei Shrade, and James Anderson for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.